camera overheated, so I don't know if there's any video of it, but cheated here. The angle wasn't quite fitting perfectly, so cut this board in place and then cut this board, which is where I really rather fudge, to 43-degree angle. Just trimmed off a hair, which made that fit a little better, and the back doesn't look too bad, although any error is back there and of course not up here. The rest of the angles actually all came out really well. I was super happy with that. All the pain of getting everything within 1/8 of an inch of being perfectly square really kind of paid off. This board is a mistake. That should have been an L shape. Let's see if we can fix that. This end, I've learned my lesson from last time. This end I'm leaving a little bit long. This is actually going all the way to the wall, and that's fine. We'll get this end cut, and then we shove it right up against our post, and then the last cut was just a simple 90-degree angle, and we'll make the other end line up perfectly. Maybe. I really hate using this board, but this gap is just a little too wide, and this is the widest 2x6 I've got. It also doesn't exactly help that that post is at a really weird angle relative to the house. It's kind of twisted. Okay. Now that I've got it to actually set in the groove, I can get an exact measurement. I'm going to fudge the gap here just a little bit so the lip of the ledger lines up with the lip of the board on this really bad end. I'm not going to fudge it so much anybody's really going to notice, but a 1/4 inch is magically going to become 3/8. Ta-da! And here I'm just kind of eyeballing 3/8. Sort of, kind of. That actually does have to line up there. To actually be 90 degrees, this is a 90-degree cut. Unfortunately a warped board, but whatever. Okay, it actually does look like it's a real 90. But since we got to fudge it a little bit at the other end, maybe we go 1 degree off of that. Oh, this just sucks. We're back to our old friend, different milling widths. And that is an insane difference. So first of all, this was a 16-footer. And it was already cut by the time I discovered the problem. Taking it back to Lowe's, not gonna happen. Thought about just ripping it, or rather screwing it in place and then ripping it, which was doubly compounded by the fact that I just had to straighten it with screws because it was kind of warped in the other direction too. That I solved with enough screws. Maybe I can just get artistic with this and cut a counter angle with the reciprocating saw and maybe pass it off as art. Okay, and welcome to day number 4, or whatever day this is. It is around 9 o'clock in the morning, and I am hoping the cicadas in the background are going to allow this audio to be usable. Who knows? So, we're kind of almost done, but among other things, we have our centerpiece here left, and just like on this side, this is not a full width piece. It's just essentially the space that's left over. By the way, sorry about the strings here. This is actually all part of my little overhead camera rig, which is currently not overhead because my old smashed iPhone 8, which I entrust to gravity and the suspension from the ceiling there, is doing whatever the heck Apple thinks it needs to be doing at the moment, so you know, it's rather uselessly sitting there. But we can do this because there's nothing overhead to really see. Okay, so if we did this right, this gap right here is going to be the same as this gap. Is 3/8 of an inch. This guy over here is somewhat less. It's maybe 3/16. Measure this, and it comes out to 4 3/8, leaving us with a narrow gap here, which I just discovered like 5 minutes ago, right before turning on this camera. And in order to keep this video PG, we're just going to leave that part unrecorded. So the good news is, this gap and this gap are actually pretty darn close to identical, which means we did our jobs right. For those of you in metric countries, I do apologize, but this is an imperial tape measure. We're in the United States. All of this wood is dimensioned in imperial. Just deal with it. So what we got to do is rip another board just like this. And all this is a 2x6, so it was cut down. Over here, the debate is, do I want to make it look identical to this guy, which means, again, making the same error, only intentionally, or do I want to do this correctly, which would give us even spacing. And I think because clearly I am a very anal person, as who else would actually be crazy enough to build this, pin squared off, cut to length thanks to our handy jig. Ignore the solar panel in the background. There are actually 2 lines on this guy. And that is a prime example of why you measure twice and cut once. This line is nonsense, hence the squiggly mark to make sure I don't accidentally cut on it. Now to try out our brand new sander. Is the one that cut the other board bought it in the process. Hoping it's on a nice peaceful farm with other sanders somewhere. The old sander was a name brand small rodent. I'm sure YouTube won't let me give you the name. This one is a Chinese knockoff. But it was like 18 bucks, and given the lifespan of the last one, seemed like a good deal. It's a motor and a weight, and it's got to vibrate with a sanding pad. How complicated does it need to be? The reason we're doing this, decking boards, like a lot of wood, kind of comes with a nice milled, rounded off, semi-smooth finish here. Of course, we just ripped this side, and it's kind of almost knife sharp. I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but not much. So we're just going to round off this edge so it comes closer to matching this edge and doesn't look quite so weird. Okay, and there we go. Didn't bother with this edge because no one's going to see that. You wouldn't want them to see this edge anyway, because this edge is, or this side anyway, is terrible. Which is a shame, because in the process of sanding, I noticed a big splinter here, which I had to take off so it wasn't sticking up. And it took a good chunk of the board with it, but oh well, it'll do.